All right, guys, on this one we're going to review the quadratic formula. You'll notice down here all our quadratics on 1 through 20. We've got all kinds here. We got some of these, if you graph them, you'd end up having 2 solutions. Okay? Some of these, if you graph them, maybe it's just the vertex that hits the x-axis, so there you'd only have 1 solution. And then we're also going to have some imaginary ones that'll end up being in this these problems here, where the parabola does not actually touch the x-axis. So we're going to see how we end up with imaginary solutions on those. Now, your quadratic formula we talked about in class, you need to memorize that. There's no getting around it. And I just wanted to remind you of the different terminology you may see for the solutions. They're called solutions, roots, zeros, x-intercepts. Those are all the same type of answer when they ask you to do any of those. And the quadratic formula, the nice thing about it is it will work for any type of quadratic. If you do the formula correctly, you'll get to the right answer. All right. All right, in the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do number 5, number 10, and number 17. So, here we go. All right, as I go through these, I'm going to already have part of these things already written out. So you may need to pause. If you tell I'm going too fast, like right now I have this all written out, you need to go ahead and write this down. So pause your video, write this down, and then we can get started. All right, on this first quadratic, it's already in this standard form right here that we've been using. So all I need to do is I need to find what A, B, and C are to start off. And then I can plug those into my quadratic formula over here. So A was 6, B, there's not a number there, so I'm going to put a -1, so that makes B -1, and then C is also -1. So when I plug everything in, I'm going to x equals, first thing is opposite of B. Well, the opposite of B, originally B's negative, so the opposite of that would be +1, plus or minus the square root of B squared. I'm always going to put B in my parentheses when I square it, whether it's positive or negative. Sorry, that didn't come out really good. Minus 4, I'm just following my formula, A times C, so A is 6 according to this. Oh, that is not doing what I want it to do at all. All right, let me slow down. All right, minus 4 times A times C, which is -1, all over 2 times I don't want to go very fast. All right, so let me try that again. So this is all over 2 times A, which is 6. Okay? Now I'm just going to follow my math rules. This is going to become still 1 in the front, plus or minus square root of B squared, -1 times -1 is 1, minus 4 times 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Times -1. Now we have 2 negatives here, you agree? So 2 negatives would make this positive. So this ends up being plus 24 over 12. 2 times 6. All right? Now I'm just going to follow my math. So I got 1 plus or minus 1 plus 24 is 25 over, that is ugly, 12. Now, this is a nice one. 25 is very easy for us. We know that square root of 25 is just plain old 5. So what I get there is that this is 1 plus or minus 5. Oh, wow. This thing is really fighting me. Nope, that's not what I want. Erase. Sorry. 1 plus or minus 5 all over 12. Now, remember we talked about in class that the reason we have the plus or minus is because the square root of 25 is not only +5, but it's also -5. So, we actually have 2 answers. We're going to have 1 plus 5. All right, we're going to have 1 plus 5. Let me erase this because I messed this up. Let me fix this. Ooh, sorry, guys. What's fighting me today? Okay. My bad, I messed this up. This should be over 12, not 2. So, get my pen back. All right, so what we really have though is two answers here. So we have 1 plus 5 over 12, or we have 1 minus 5 over 12. So if we work that out, 1 plus 5 is 6, right? Well, what's 6 over 12? Well, 6 over 12 reduces to 1/2. What is 1 minus 5? Well, 1 minus 5 is -4. What's -4 over 12? Well, -4 over 12 both reduces by 4, so you end up with -1 over 3. And if you look it down in your options on the front, you should have that answer down there at the bottom. All right, let's look at number 10. I want you to do these on the back of the worksheet so you have all this stuff together. But number 10, go ahead and write it down, write everything down, and then pause it until you get it all written down, and then talk about it. All right, number 10, notice, was not equal to 0. And for it to be in standard form, it must be equal to 0. So what I did here in the second step, I went ahead and pushed the 6 to the other side of the equal sign. So when I chunk it over, it goes from -6 to +6. And so this is what I have. And so my A, B, and C, if I'm going off of this, there's A, B, and C. So A is 4, B is -25, and C is 6. Okay? Do not skip this step for right now. Make sure you do this every time. You also should be writing your formula down every time. Otherwise, you are not going to remember it. All right, so here we go. We're going to do our quadratic formula. We're going to do the opposite of B. Well, in this case, B is -25, so the opposite of that would be +25. Plus or minus B squared. So I'm going to do -25 squared. Ooh, these big numbers, aren't they? Minus 4 times A. Let me get rid of that. It doesn't like parentheses for some reason. Times A, which is 4, times C, which is 6. All right, so I might need a little calculator on this because these are bigger numbers. All over 2 times A, which is 4. Don't forget that bottom part. That's what a lot of people try to do. They forget the denominator. All right, so if we work this out, 25, still there, plus or minus. 25 squared, if you put in your calculator, is 625. And then 4 times 4 is 16, times 6 would be 96 if you put all that in your calculator. Now, it is negative because you'll notice now I have one negative. There's not another negative in here to change it back to a positive. So it's 625 minus 96. Now I'm going to subtract before I take the root over 2 times 4, which is 8. So I'm going to do 625 minus 96, which is 30. No, I'm sorry, what is that? Which is 529, so this is 25 plus or minus square root of 529 over 8. Now, 529 is real ugly, and I don't know about y'all, but I sure don't want to break that down. I don't have to, so I need to make sure I check it and make sure it's not perfect. It's not one I'm familiar with, but if you put square root of 529 in your calculator, you actually get that it is 23. So 23 times 23 is 529. So check it in your calculator before you start trying to break down a number, and check it first. So what you have here is 25 plus or minus 23 all over 8. Okay? And remember, we talked about that that means you have two answers. So that means one of our answers is going to be 25 plus 23 over 8. Whoa. Or it's going to be 25 minus 23 over 8. Okay? Now, 25 plus 23 is 48. 48 divided by 8, that's easy. That's 6. Or, what's 25 minus 23? That's a 2. Would be 2. 2 over 8 reduces to 1/4. So those would be your two answers. 6 or 1/4. Okay? Okay, guys, last one. Number 17. Number 17 starts out x squared equals 2 times the parentheses x minus 5, the quantity x minus 5. Well, we don't want parentheses in there, and we definitely want this equal to 0. So I'm going to get rid of the parentheses first. So when I do that, I end up with 2x minus 10. And then when I've set it equal to 0, the 2x chunks and the negative 10 chunks. So I'm going to change the 2x to negative 2x and the negative 10 to positive 10. Now I have my ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So in this case, a would be, there's nothing there, so it's a 1. B is negative 2. And c is 10. Okay, so I'm going to take those numbers and plug them into the formula. So it's always the opposite of b. b is negative 2, so opposite of that would be positive 2, plus or minus, b squared, so that's negative 2. Notice I'm putting that in parentheses every time. You need to do it also. Minus 4 times a times 1 times 10. Because that's 4 times a times c. A is 1, c is 10. So I'm just plugging it in. All over 2 times a, which is 1 again in this case. Okay? Square root goes all the way across. Equals, man, that is just ugly parentheses. I didn't like it. All right, I'm going to work everything out one step at a time. I got 2 plus or minus. Negative 2 squared is 4. Now if I do this part, 4 times 1 is 4, times 10 is 40. I only have one negative, so that means the whole thing would be negative. So it's 4 minus 40 over 2. All right. 4 minus 40 is negative 36. So this is 2 plus or minus negative 36 all over 2. Now, we have no problem doing the square root of 36, okay? Square root of 36 is just plain old 6, right? Well, but here we have negative 36. Remember we talked about in the class, if you have a negative square root, it just means that you have an imaginary solution. So we're not going to leave the negative under the root. We're going to pull it out and put an I there instead. So the square root of negative 36 is actually 6i. Okay? So what that looks like is 2 plus or minus square root of 36, negative 36 is 6i. Put a little tail on the I so it doesn't look like something else. And then over 2. Now, we would be done except for the fact that all these numbers will reduce by 2. So we're going to reduce everything by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus or minus. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then here, we could put this all over 1, but we don't want to do that. Just like if your answer was 5 over 1, you just write it 5. So we're just going to write this 1 plus or minus 3i. And we'd be done. Okay? So here we have an imaginary answer. Now remember though, this is two answers. It's 1 plus 3i and 1 minus 3i. So you do have two answers there, even though it's written as a combination. Okay, if you need more time to finish that, write that down, then pause it for a second. But before you come in class tomorrow on Tuesday, I want you to have 1 through 8 complete. We will finish the rest in class. If you'd like to get ahead so you have less homework tomorrow, then you can go ahead and get as many of those done as possible. But I need you to have 1 through 8 done at the minimum. Have a good evening.